Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Community Development Block Grant 2021 Application Guidelines webinar series. Today's webinar is our third and final one of the week, and we will be focusing on the AmpliFund application walkthrough. Lead presenters today include Dylan Cornett, myself, Rebecca Shademan, Steve Charleston, the CDBG Program Manager, and Amber Ward, who is serving as our host and is keeping track of everyone's questions and chat submissions. Also serving as panelists today, we have Dave Hans, Tom Stevens, Evan Clark, Kylie Bischoff, and Aaron Boucher. Before we begin, I do want to go over a couple technology items in case you are new to being a participant on our webinars. I set up this event to mute all attendees upon entry, but if you could please double check to ensure that you are in fact truly muted. You can see next to your name, there should be a red icon of a microphone and it should be red. Otherwise, if you are joining through your phone system, please mute via your phone. Also, we are recording this webinar, so if you could submit any questions, comments via the chat in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar system, that would be appreciated. Again, we want to make sure that everyone is fully understanding the system, so if you do have questions, it is very appreciated, and we want to answer them to the best of our ability. So today's agenda is we're going to focus on the resources available to users. We'll be discussing the user account setup, how to add additional users to your account, and the overall structure of the CDBG application within AmpliFund. This includes the project information, the application forms, and the budget. This is an overall general review of the system. We're not going into specific opportunities and how each opportunity looks. So if you have questions, we can answer them during the presentation. So we wanted to first start off with using the AmpliFund application portal and talk about some of the best practices. So before even hopping onto AmpliFund, we wanted you to ask yourself who and to determine who is submitting the CDBG application. So if you are a local unit of government and you're planning on hiring someone, please determine who would be responsible for submitting the CDBG application within the system. Once you determine who will be submitting the application, then you will go into AmpliFund, and if you're a first-time user, we recommend that you create a general account either for the organization that you represent. So it could be the local unit of government, it could be a development district, or it could be a consultant company who is will be in charge of submitting the application within AmpliFund. If you currently already have a user account within the application portal, that is still active. So if you've already submitted applications within the previous grant cycle, that is still active and you can use that. Once you set up a general account for your entity, you can then add specific individual user accounts associated with the entity to the general account. And we'll go into a little bit more details on this with a walkthrough that Dylan will be leading us through. A few resources wanted to make everyone aware of is our Nebraska Department of Economic Development web pages specifically for AmpliFund, and then also for the Community Development Block Grant. On our AmpliFund webpage, we do have two specific user guides that would be very helpful if you are logging on to the applicant portal within AmpliFund. So the first one is registering for the applicant portal third-party consultant, and then the second is how to add users in the applicant portal. And with that, I'm going to switch our presenter mode over to Dylan. And Dylan, you should be getting access.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks.
And yes, as Rebecca mentioned, I want to show the AmpliFund page, the frequently asked questions page that we put together at opportunity.nebraska.gov/AmpliFund. At the top, we have some instructions for how to log on, and then resources for different programs, and also general resources, and quick links here to get to those sections on this page. Under the general section, under frequently asked questions on the application tab, this is where you can find those referenced user guides. For example, here's the registering for the applicant portal as a third-party consultant, and how to add users in the applicant portal, and also how to apply videos. And under the CDBG section, we will be adding the webinar videos we've had this week, and also a 2021 application guide. And also, as Rebecca mentioned, on the CDBG page on the opportunity.nebraska.gov site, we will have links to the opportunity applications located in this section. Once you click the Apply Here button, you'll be taken to the opportunity. Today we'll be focusing mostly on public works opportunity. So when you first click on that Apply Here button, you'll be taken to this opportunity details page for that particular opportunity. On this page, you can see a description of the opportunity, the name of the opportunity manager, the posted date, some award information, submission open and close dates, and the open date will be changed to 6/14 for this particular opportunity. Question submission information, and some additional information down here at the bottom. If you haven't applied before, you'll begin by registering within this application portal. You can click this login button here in the top right to begin that process. I'm going to click register. And then you would fill out this information for that organization that, as Rebecca mentioned. And each field that has an asterisk is required. And filling out organization information down here below. Once you click register, you'll be taken back to the opportunity details page. I'm going to log in as myself. Once you're registered and logged in, you can see the apply button here in the top right. I'll go ahead and click apply. And the first screen you're taken to is the project information page. On the project information page, the first field is application name. For this field, please enter the local unit of government dash 2021, the opportunity category dash main activity. So for example, I could enter Columbus dash 2021 CDBG Public Works dash streets. The next field on this project information page is award requested. How much are you requesting from the funder? Please review the application guidelines. If you enter, say, too much, you'll get an error. And it will say requested an amount larger than the maximum allowed. Please adjust to be at or under that figure. The next section is asking how much are you planning to contribute to the budget. For this particular example, I'm using Columbus, and for public works, according to the application guidelines, the match contribution requirement is 30%. So that would be 75,000. In the bottom section is called the primary contact information. These fields will auto-populate with the details provided from when you registered at the beginning. If some fields are blank, please enter any information remaining about the applying user, and the applying user will be referred to as a primary contact. So for this example, I'm going to fill in some of these required fields. And in order to successfully submit an application, all sections of the application need to be marked as complete. So you can see that button here. So I'm going to mark it as complete. And you can see the item was saved successfully because all of the required fields have been filled in.
And Dylan?
Yeah.
I just want to add that the amounts you input on this section correlate with the budget, so they would need to match. So that is one area we do review when the application is submitted. So please make sure those match your budget, and we'll get to that later on.
Also, when you first come to the opportunity details page, I forgot to mention you are able to print or download the blank application. So now that I've marked this section as complete, I'm going to click Save and Continue. And that takes me to the application forms section. Each of these forms will need to be clicked on and filled in per the instructions and then marked as complete when finished. If you've partially completed an application form and wish to save changes and return later, please click the Save button at the bottom of the form that you're working on. As you can see, exhibits will also be accessible via the application form section. I wanted to mention this status column will indicate the progress of each application form. New means the application form has not yet been clicked on or filled in, and so all forms will appear as new the first time you access the application. The next status will say in progress if the form's been partially completed and saved. The final status will say complete, and that means all required fields have been entered in the form and the form has been marked as complete. I also want to mention you can print off each individual form if you wish by clicking each print button next to the form. And I want to note here, applicants will have the ability to print a completed version of the application in its entirety before final submission after everything's filled in. So let's begin taking a look at the first application forms, Part 1, Applicant Contact and Prepare Information. The first section is applicant information. For this section, enter the information of the applying municipality. In the name of the applicant municipality field here, please enter the name of the local unit of government applicant. So for my this, don't include city of, village of, etc. in the name of applicant municipality field. The municipality type will be determined in the next question, applicant municipality type. In the mailing address section, the address line 1 field is required, as you can see by the asterisk. Please enter the street address here in this line 1 field, and if applicable, please enter PO box in line 2. We'll select state from a drop-down list. Same with county. And we have fields for the applicant tax ID and DUNS number. In the next section, we have fields dedicated to the chief elected official, mayor, or board chair, who will be referred to as the authorizer in this form. Name, title, email, and so on. And as above, street address will go in line 1, PO box, if applicable, will be entered in line 2. In the next section, we're asking for local contact information. So identify the local contact for the local unit of government. Depending on the structure, the local contact is usually the clerk or city administrator. The local contact is the main contact for questions regarding the CDBG application and will be responsible for adding additional users if the applicant organization does not have an AmpliFund recipient account yet. In the next section, we're asking for information about the application preparer, so the person filling out this application. The first question is the preparer organization different from the applicant? So if I was with the City of Columbus, I would say no. If I was with any other organization, I would select yes. And then a preparer type question would appear. If you're selecting Economic Development District, a drop-down will appear where you can select one of those development districts. If you select other, you'll be able to specify the preparer type. And scrolling down, there is additional information we'd like to collect about the application preparer. In those fields. And next is additional contact information. Secondary contact. The first question is there another contact that should be notified regarding the status of the application? If no, select no and no additional fields will appear. If there is, you'll select yes, and you'll be able to provide that contact information for that secondary contact. The final required field for that section is this secondary contact an employee of the local unit of government applicant? You select yes, that's it for that section. If you select no, please enter the organization name and address information for that secondary contact.
This is Amber. Dylan.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have a question. If you have a login for AmpliFund from another organization, will you be able to use that to get this application?
That may be a specific question we'd have to talk about. I would need some more information. Do you mean login and password information from an organization you don't belong to? I think we'd like to have each organization have their own login with users added with their own information. I think that would be best practice. I hope that answers that question.
Makes sense. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you. The last section on this part 1 is award information. And I'll just read this section for you. If this application is awarded CDBG funding, identify the main contact to manage the post-award process. This individual is an employee of the local unit of government and will serve initially as the recipient grant manager. The recipient grant manager is responsible for ensuring the day-to-day oversight of the grant within AmpliFund. Initially, this position is a local unit of government employee, but once the local unit of government hires a certified administrator, the certified administrator will be designated this role. And the first question is, will the recipient grant manager be the same as the local contact above? If yes, that is the end of the form. If no, then we'll ask for contact information about that person. Are there any other additional questions about this first application form?
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Dylan, I just want to add, if you are a local contact and you're not very technology savvy, but you have another staff member within the local unit of government that is technology savvy with everything, our recommendation is to identify that secondary staff member here. We'll still be notifying the local contact of that city clerk or a city administrator of everything, in addition to the person that is initially identified as the recipient grant manager. We had a couple individuals struggle with getting everything set up first. So if you have a person within the local unit government that is your go-to for technology items, I recommend placing them in on this field initially if you are awarded for CDBG funds. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. So as you have seen, I've not entered information in each required field on this form. So I will get an error if I try to mark this form as complete. It will tell me I have more required fields that are blank or have invalid entries, and each field will populate some red text to flag those fields. So in that case, I'm just going to save and continue. If I go back to the application form by clicking this button up here, you can see now that status has changed to in progress. Okay, so I'm going to flip to part 2, special policies for applicants.
Dylan, I will take over the presentation for this piece. So this part 2, special policies for applicants, we've standardized this across each one of the CDBG opportunities. So you'll notice that some of the questions do not apply to your opportunity, but we've standardized it so they automatically just show up on every single opportunity. So if you were applying for owner-occupied rehabilitation, the type of applicant there is only individual. So you would indicate individual there. And in an owner-occupied rehab project, the next question, does this project involve a for-profit entity? You would indicate no. And the following question, does this project involve a nonprofit entity? You would indicate no. Now, if we went into an opportunity that allows either individual joint applications, which Public Works is one of those, and it is determined that the application is a joint application, you would indicate joint on this field, and then you would identify each local unit of government that will be participating on this application. And just like you did in part 1, you would only use the name of the local unit of government. So if Columbus is the lead applicant, potentially maybe they are in a joint application with Duncan, Silver Creek, and Monroe, as an example. And then an executed written agreement with the joint local government would be uploaded here. Clearly identifying the roles and responsibility of each local unit of government. If you are applying under the joint application, feel free to contact the department to make sure that you have everything clearly identified. Because these are a little bit rare within the CDBG program lately. We haven't had as many in the past. So feel free to reach out to us on what all needs to be included. Now, if this, we're in a public works project right now, so there is no for-profit entity, so that still remains as no. But if we were building a daycare center, there could be a nonprofit involved. And so we would click yes to the following. Sorry, Dylan, next question. Click no to this one. Thank you. And then you would indicate the nonprofit entity's name, address information, and then also provide to us the proof of Secretary of State registration and documentation showing that they are in good standing. And then we would need to see also an upload of the draft or final document of Memorandum of Understanding, and you would upload it here. So that's kind of in the joint application involving a nonprofit entity. Let's go through the example of if this was an economic development project, we would then, and it could be a joint application for economic development, and then we would state, does this project involve a for-profit entity? Yes, would be indicated, and then the for-profit entity would be listed here. And again, you would upload the proof of Secretary of State registration, documenting that the business is in good standing. And you would also provide us the information of the nonprofit development organization, commonly known as NGO. Again, we need their proof of Secretary of State documentation that they are in good standing, and along with a written agreement between the for-profit entity, the NGO, and the local unit of government. Amber, do we have any questions on that? So again, if you are applying for any opportunity within CDBG, you'll be presented those 3 questions and you'll have to answer them pertaining to your opportunity and application. Amber, go ahead.
There's no new questions.
Okay. Next up, we have the chief elected official signature. So this is, Dylan, do you want to, we have the template available on AmpliFund. So you would just click on that link that's in green and it'll bring up this documentation. This does need to be printed on letterhead and then needs to reflect the information of the local unit of government applying for CDBG funds. This is signed in blue ink by the chief elected official, and the title of the tester, usually that's the city clerk or city administrator, depending on the structure of the applicant, and then indicate the date signed. This form does need to be signed either the same day as the public hearing or after. And again, if you do receive comments based off of your application at the time of public hearing, please make sure you are addressing those public comments before signing this document. Any questions on this?
No new questions.
Thank you. And Dylan, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. So once again, I will save and continue. And that will take me to part 3 of the application called Funding Summary. So the purpose of this section is for applicants to identify all the project activities associated with the application and activities that will meet national objectives. So for this public works opportunity, I'm going to select whether or not my project includes each activity. So for example, I'm going to select yes for senior center. And then the next question in this section will ask me what national objective I'm going to meet and the proposed unit type. And each activity that is allowed is included in this section. I'm going to scroll down to water sewer improvements. I'm going to select yes to that activity. The next question is what kind of improvements? This is a multiple selection checkbox, so you can select more than one option applicable, and then choose which national objective and the proposed unit type.
So what this section, sorry, Dylan. So what this section is telling us is each one of the CDBG activities that you are proposing for your project and what national objective they're meeting and who is the beneficiary type. So one of the core things that to take away from this, since we selected water and sewer improvement and the national objective is LMA, then that means an exhibit E, E1, or E2 would need to be completed. So that's what we will be looking for. Earlier above, Dylan selected senior centers and selected the national objective as LMC. So then we would be expecting to see the completion of exhibit E3 within your application materials. Both of these activities are serving beneficiaries in the form of people. So we would be looking for that also within the exhibit materials. Dylan, if you scroll down to construction management.
Yes.
So construction management is a supporting activity, and it is paired with the activity with the most funds being dedicated to this. So you would identify LMA, because the majority of the funds are going to the street improvements, the water and sewer in our example, improvements here, and it will be benefiting people. You'll notice on this listing that general administration is not included. That was purposeful by the department. This is just informing us of your project activities and identifying the national objective and the type of proposed unit benefiting from the activity. And then I believe we will run through an additional activities within the DTR program to give folks.
Yes, I just wanted to mention real quick, in order to complete this form, if I'm done selecting yes to the activities, I would just select no to the others, and then mark as complete at the bottom. And now that I've marked that as complete, when I return to the application forms, you can see that that status is complete. So yes, let's switch to the downtown revitalization application, part 3, funding summary. Which activity do we want to look at?
Commercial rehabilitation. So if you're doing commercial rehab in a DTR program, and this is very similar within the owner-occupied rehabilitation program, you would indicate yes. You would identify the national objective for commercial rehab. It's only through spill and blight. and then you would be identifying the proposed unit type as businesses. In the section, we did add additional field. We want you to indicate how many proposed businesses will be benefited from this funding. So Dylan has typed in 25, so you are proposing that 25 businesses will be participating in a commercial rehabilitation program. So if you were doing an owner-occupied rehab program, so everybody use your imaginations. I know the words aren't matching up here. We would be asking the national objective would indicate LMH, you would select that, and then the proposed unit type would be housing units, and then you would identify the number of housing units that would be rehabbed with your CDBG project. So very similar there. Amber, have we received any questions?
No questions.
Okay, one other area that I do want to highlight here for DTR, if you go back to that, Dylan, is if you have maybe, I think streets are on this opportunity, if you scroll up to that one. And indicate yes.
So, sorry, which activity?
Street improvement. You would identify the national objective that it was meeting. So if it is meeting the low moderate income national objective, we're gathering your beneficiary data within Exhibit E's. But if it is meeting your slum and blight on an area basis or spot basis, we do need your proposed number of beneficiaries identified here. So if it's people, I believe we are using population of the community for this. So please note that if you will be reviewing this and adding guidance on this within our application guidelines, this is something someone has asked questions on, so we are going to be updating our guidelines and having those republished for clarification on this aspect here. But wanted to make everybody aware of this. We are not collecting beneficiary data on slum and blight within Exhibit F. We're getting the documentation to qualify your activity with that national objective. So this is a new component we've added and clarified this year. That is it for me, Dylan.
Thanks, Rebecca. I will switch back to the Public Works opportunity and the application I've been working on here. So the next form is Part 4, Project Information. And you can see at the beginning of this form describes the selection criteria and the maximum number of points available and the threshold minimums for each of these sections and the total. The first section for this opportunity is need and extent of the problem. We have the description here and point values and those descriptions here. As you can see, there's a character limit for these text boxes, and that will decrease as characters are entered. Again, want to mention the fields with the asterisk are required. And some fields, as we saw before, depending on your answer, will populate additional fields. So for this question, has there been a formal study report completed that recommends the proposed solution? If you select no, that's the end of this section. If you select yes, additional questions are asked. The next section is citizen participation. The description and point breakdowns here. Next section is project impact. this opportunity. And for Public Works in 2021, we've included water wastewater project questions. So in this section, it's asked, is this application for a water wastewater project? If yes, additional questions will be asked. The next section is project readiness. If it is a water wastewater project, there are additional requirements in this section. And again, if questions are answered in a certain way, additional questions will be asked. And because I indicated it was a wastewater project above, these questions have appeared. If I go back up, indicate no, then you can see those questions have been removed. The next section is achievements. This is just a one question section. And the final question is supplemental materials. Depending on the nature and scope of project activities proposed, the following information may be required for the application, whether it's facility, we're requiring an upload for a facility floor plan. If it's wastewater, wastewater, we are requiring an upload of the preliminary engineering report. Have any questions been submitted about this Part 4 form?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you, Amber.
Hi, Dylan. Just want to remind everyone that Part 4 is dependent on the opportunity you are applying for. All of these questions are within our 2021 CDBG application guidelines in the specific opportunity part, section 5.06. I do recommend, if you are working on answers for this, to work in a Word document prior, so you can collaborate with other partners or individuals on the answers regarding these questions. And if you have any specific questions of how to complete a question within the selection criteria, please reach out to the CDBG program representative, and they can help you determine the best way to answer a certain question based off of your proposed project. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm going to save, go back up to application forms. So we've gone through the 4 parts of this particular Public Works application. In a previous webinar, we've discussed the exhibits. So now I'm going to skip ahead to the budget. To do that, I will just select the budget icon here. The budget will display categories that all proposed costs should be entered against. And as Rebecca mentioned at the beginning, those figures that we entered in the project information section are located here under the revenue budget. So I need to enter expenses in this expense budget that equal the award requested and the cash match. So at the end, the overall budget cost should be 0. So to enter expenses, you'll begin by clicking the green plus icon next to the category name, and a new line item window will appear, allowing you to enter details for each line item. Follow the instructions on how to complete line items for each category and type in the line item name in the name field. Next, enter the direct cost. This will be the total amount of the line item, including match. So for example, for this line item, if I wanted to include match, I would select yes to non-grant funded, and I will be given additional fields. And say, for example, I wanted 7,500 in grant funded dollars and 2,500 in match amount. So the direct cost should be 10,000. And you can switch from dollar or percentage for your cash match field. For cash match, I would enter 2,500. And now you can see the grant funded amount, cash match amount, and the total budgeted. You may also enter a narrative about this line item. Here in this box. And once you are finished, click Create to save that line item. Once you have, you can see that the grant funded and non-grant funded amounts will appear here in the expense budget and the total budgeted amount. And you can see that the overall budget cost has been reduced by that total budgeted amount. So in order to make that the budget line up with the project information, I will need to enter correct amount remaining in the budget. So you can see I entered 315,000 for the total, 75 for non-grant funded. But you can see I've made an error. The 2,500 from this line item added to the 75,000 from this line item is more than what I've indicated my cash match will be. So I've got to fix that. I've got this error message here. Got to reduce 2,500 somewhere. All right, so that error has been removed. I can see that the grant funded amount and non-grant funded amounts match both the expense and the revenue budget, and the overall budget cost has been reduced to 0. So that's exactly what we want. So now I can mark as complete, and you can see it's been saved successfully.
Before you move off of this page, I just wanted to remind everyone that for training purposes, we had very generic line items placed in here. This application budget needs to provide us full details of how you are coming up with your request for CDBG funds. So if you were doing street improvements, we would want to see line items telling us how you came up with the full dollar amount that you are requesting. So we don't want to see these general senior center 03A entered in there. We just did that for training purposes today. We are wanting to see your full breakout of how you came up with this estimate. If you are awarded funds, we would move to a more simplified version of the budget. So we didn't see all those estimates in there, but we do need to see how you came up with the numbers. So let us know if you have questions. If there are, again, please provide detail of how you came up with numbers. Steve, do you have any additional items you want to add to the budget portion here?
No, I think you explained it well. If later on it is possible, and that can be discussed later on, if the budget submitted needs revision with any other parts, there is a process to be open the submitted application. So, well, you covered it. Thank you, Rebecca and Dylan.
Thanks, Steve. Amber, have we received any questions thus far?
We haven't.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will save and continue. The last section of the application is the submit option. It indicates that I'm about to submit my application, the application title, to the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. Take the time to remove your application using this timeline here. You can select any section and jump to that page. When the application is fully complete, please select the submit button, and that will submit the application to the funder. At this point, you can see I've got an error here. I have forms containing required fields that have not been completed. And remember, that is because in the application forms, the status of all of these application forms needs to be complete, as this one is. So when I go to the submit section, I'm not able to submit. But at this point, I am able to download and review the answers I have in the application. Once all the application forms have been made complete, and each of these sections shows this check mark, I would be able to submit. Once an application has been submitted, no changes can be made unless, as Steve mentioned, your program representative reopens the application for you to make changes. Once submitted, you will receive a successful submission screen where you can download your completed application. You can also exit back to the main screen, all of your applications.
Hey, Dylan.
Go ahead.
Can you click on the application form? One thing I do want to remind everyone, so each one of the exhibits does need to be marked as complete. To help you with your submission of this, I would take stock of your project and identify which exhibits apply to your specific project. So for example, we might not be meeting the national objective of limited clientele for our project. So then we would just click on that and indicate no right away and then mark as complete. I think this helps when you are moving through your application to determine what forms do you really need to complete. So we do have a list of all the exhibits within the application guidelines, and then if you have a question on if one of these are required, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to help. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. I believe one of the last points I wanted to make is when you are logged in here in the application portal and you're looking at the opportunity details page, if you wish to view your currently submitted applications that are under your organization name, click on the Nebraska Economic Development icon here in the top left. That will take you to the list of all of the applications that saved or submitted. So that is it. Are there any questions?
There's no any questions yet.
Okay.
If you have questions on setting up a user account, or maybe you are wondering if your current user account is good and you switched organizations, I think we received a question earlier on that. Feel free to send us an email and we can look into your particular situation so we fully can comprehend what's going on and then provide you technical assistance. And again, these applications for owner-occupied rehabilitation pre-application will go live next week. Public Works, planning, and downtown revitalization will go live next week. I will be sending out an email informing you of the webinar recordings, where those will be located on our website next week also. So more communication from me. Thank you all for attending today. We appreciate the interest that you guys have in our program.